Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another PsyMood session here this evening. I am so excited beyond belief about this webinar. We are having an amazing webinar with two amazing guests. This webinar is about finding resilience and coping with traumas, disabilities, and diversities. I am so honored to have two amazing guests here with me this evening. Once they are here, we're going to start this webinar here, get the action going. So I want to introduce myself first. My name is Ross Wilson. I am a mental health consultant based here in Ontario, Canada. Along with being a mental health consultant, I specialize in psychological first aid, as well as I'm also a chaplain and a hospice chaplain as well, working with end-of-life care in the homeless population and low-income families, trying to help them support. So again, guys, I would like to thank you for joining us, and I want to welcome our two guests, Alicia and Nelson. These are two amazing individuals, and we would like to welcome them to show up and be part of this webinar. So both of you, if you'd like to turn on your cameras and turn on your microphones, I want to welcome both of you here this evening. And Alicia, we'll start with you, ladies first. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and kind of the journey that took you to where you are today?
Oh, okay, thanks, Ross, for having me. And I just want to say good evening to all the people and all the listeners that are on the platform tonight. And as Ross said, my name's Alethea. I'm a registered psychotherapist based in Toronto, and I'm also on the PsyMood platform. And I came to this journey so long ago. And my passion has always been working and supporting individuals that really need to just understand, the complexities of living in a Toronto and an urban city. Primarily, 90% of my clientele is from the Afro, Indigenous, and Caribbean community. And, for them, migration has always been an issue in learning how to settle in a new place with a new community and a new culture. And I emigrated here as a young child when I was 7 years old from the UK. And, I had a wonderful experience growing up here, even though my parents were in their midlife decision making. They were able to choose Canada as a home. And I've always felt amazing living here and supporting people that have also had some adverse situations, and they were able to cope and get through it. And, just growing up here, I've always supported and always had an interest of being in this field and working with young people and also with adults that might have faced some adversity in their life and they needed some support to get through it.
Well, wonderful. Well, Alicia, I am honored to have you here. Thank you so much for spending your time with us this evening. And I'd like to introduce you to Nelson Leoni. I could read his bio, but I would not do it justice. It is an amazing description of bio, but I would like to pass over the floor to you, sir, and tell us your journey and how you got here.
Hi, thank you, guys. Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me in this conversation. So I'm very excited today because today for me is like a kind of dream comes true. I am here to discuss with you about resilience because I am a survivor. So basically about 15 years ago, I was seriously wounded in combat in Haiti during a peacekeeping mission under the United Nations mission. And since that time, I have been facing different challenges. I became a Paralympic athlete. I basically redefined my professional career. Before I was like a military. Now I am a digital expert. And I worked at the United Nations, UNICEF for over 6 years. Now I am in Brazil as a chief strategy officer in a tech company called Decode. And today is very important because today I am releasing my book, my life story, that I hope that can inspire you guys and your colleagues during these times that we have been facing on. And this is the main part of what I want to discuss today and share my experience and how I have been facing and coping all these challenges in my life.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for sharing, as I probably wouldn't have done that well with your bio. So I thank you so much. And we'll talk a little bit more about your book near the end. And reminder to everyone watching to have your questions ready for us at the end. We will let you know when we're going to start going through the list, because we're expecting quite a few questions, which is wonderful. And we thank all of you for joining us this evening. So the main thing right now we're talking about is finding resilience, coping with traumas, disabilities, and diversity. Now, with psychological first aid is something that I work with closely with individuals, is trying to find the coping mechanism or the tips or tools to help get through a traumatic event. A lot of people think that psychological first aid is for disasters, fires, floods, all these things like that. But I think what we're learning now more than ever is that this pandemic can be classified as a traumatic event, as big as a disaster. And I know a lot of you can understand and relate, and both of you guys can also relate to as well, that the process of that uncertain feeling of, is it over? When is it going to continue? And I look at that kind of traumatic event as sort of like a continuous fire. We don't know when it's going to be over. We have kind of like an idea of when this pandemic will be over. But during this time, I find that resilience is something that even myself is starting to, learn a little bit more about it. So, Alethea, what would you say is your definition of like resilience? Like you came here, to Canada. You understand that kind of, taking a new journey, taking a new step, taking a new path in your life. Did you find that resilience was something that you were finding hard to comprehend or deal with? Or what would you say like resilience is to you?
That's a great question. And the way that I see resilience is just having the ability to cope with situations that could be traumatic or a sudden change. And when you're resilient, it's just about having the ability and the support, whether it's through your family, whether it's through your emotional support, whether it's through your spiritual connections, finding, that space where you can overcome that adversity, and then also channel that energy into finding, some comfort and some consistency in a new place that you call home. And, when I came as a child at 7 years old, my parents were still in their middle-aged, and they just felt that this was a great opportunity just to try something new and go to a new place where their children can grow and learn. And it's not like they didn't have that ability where they came from, and I came from the UK. They just looked at the possibilities of living in Canada, and that for them, they felt that there was just more options for their children. And they thought that, this is a good place that I'd like to be. So, just looking at expanding things that they already knew and just wanting to try something new. And I'm sure at that time, it must have been really daring and really bold to have to, uproot your children at a young age and then find a new life and find a new way in Canada. And I think for a lot of newcomers and people that are just learning how to settle here, that's what they're finding is their challenge. And they're looking at those adversities of how they came to Canada. And now that they're settled here, and they're saying, oh my gosh, look at the ability that I have to overcome that challenge. And I'm doing something new in a new country. That's just so amazing to me. So for me, it's just about overcoming those challenges and finding a new way to survive and to thrive in a new place.
Yeah, and that's so well said. I mean, just being uncomfortable in a new place, a new journey, especially at a young age, is something that I'm sure that we can all relate to, that uncertainty, confusion, and wondering where our next journey will be. And Nelson, your bio, explains a lot about resilience. The trauma and the journey that you went on. Resilience must have been something that you really were potentially struggling to kind of comprehend and figure out. Was during that time of uncertainty when you were injured, during that, you're during Haiti and everything like that. Was it hard to find resilience through that?
To be very honest, the support that I received, the environment where I were, brought me some resilience that I didn't expect at that time. So one thing that I realized is when you are facing a problem, a big challenge or a small challenge, this is your challenge, you know? So you cannot compare your problem with others because sometimes they are facing their ones, they have different lives, they have different environment, different families members. And I was alone without any family member, but I received support from doctors, I received support from colleagues that I met during the hospital. And I realized that being resilient during that time is not give up. So is understanding that I have a second chance. I can move forward. I can keep doing. I can keep at least trying. So if you give up, okay, I don't care, I give up. You don't have the chance, you don't have the opportunity to overcome it. And when you not only act as this person, you can also influence or sharing this positive feeling, and people will be close to you and share this also positive feeling. So you can attract good things and inspire people, and they will try to support you in different way. So I realized it when a doctor, he came to my room, and he's not like smiling, he's very serious, like, okay. And I replied to him, hey, why are you here with this face? You don't have the right to be like this. I am happy because I'm alive. So, and we start to discuss about different kind of things, and he understood that I will not give up. I will try to focus in my recovery, but at the same time, I need your support to be smiling, to be positive as well. So being resilient to me during all the challenges that I have been facing on is understand, first of all, that your challenge is your challenge. So you can share, you have the choice, you have the right in order to invite someone to ask for support. You don't need to face your challenge alone, but you need to make your decision. And don't give up, and understand that you have much more strong than you imagine, because when you try, you're gonna, and the last thing, because I'm talking a lot, so is about quick wins. Don't expect to overcome all the difficulties or the challenges, but focus in one tiny thing, just for one day, just for 1 hour, just for 2 days, for 1 week. And when you got it, think about the next one. So tiny steps, tiny baby steps, and then you can overcome this part. So being resilient, don't give up, and believe that you have the capacity to overcome this.
Well, if that's not one of the greatest YouTube motivational videos you can get, you put a little bit of music behind there and you have followers, that's unbelievable. And I think it's amazing because, you know, just listening to both of you talk and you know, being from Canada, I'm born in Canada. I didn't immigrate from anywhere. I'm born and bred in Canada. I never had that feeling of, you know, I don't belong here. Because I'm here, you know. And so the wonderful thing about being in Canada is that the diverse community of individuals, the communities that we can gain and meet. And like all of us here talking right now, we're meeting each other, you know, discussing something that's very relatable. And I think a lot of people can say, you know what, I couldn't possibly relate at the beginning, but now during this pandemic of being isolated, learning about new things, loss of a job, you know, if you think about it, you know, losing a job is a traumatic event. Losing, you know, the opportunity to go outside with friends, losing the opportunity of meeting friends at a restaurant or a cup of coffee, that's a traumatic event. And I think, you know, when I talk to people and I talk about psychological first aid and my psychological first aid toolkit, which we'll get into, is, you know, we are maybe not really taking this pandemic or this journey that we're on right now as seriously as some people may. Because in regards to our mental health and cognitive health, the pandemic has shown us a lot about ourselves. about how resilient we can or cannot be. And I think, Nelson, said it, quite clearly, is as long as you have a great people around you, people that will help boost you, to help guide you, to help you fly, open up your wings a little bit more, you can build that resilience, because at the end of the day, you have the opportunity to wake up another day and experience something. So yes, this is a scary time. And yes, there's a lot of uncertainty, but the moment we wake up and take our first breath in the first moment in the morning, that's an amazing achievement. That's resilience, is the ability to wake up and take a deep breath. Now, Alethea, you're working with a lot of families, a lot of children. It's very, very easy for us to talk to adults and say, hey, be resilient, just go with the flow, figure this all out, we can work on it. Do you find it a little bit more difficult to work with younger kids and youth when it comes to trauma, trying to build that resilience? Do you find it difficult with the youth?
Well, I see it in a twofold way in terms of the youth, because the youth have their own way of finding information. And, we have to look at the age and stage and the level of maturity. So I'll say for the ones that are under the age of 12, they're really looking at their parents, and they're observing how their parents interact and have engaged, and how they've coped with their emotions during this time. And for children under that age, they see by observation. So if you're having a hard time managing, then your children will, observe that and adopt some of those coping strategies that they've observed through you. Now, the best thing to do, and I'm sure a lot of people have done this, is just really gather their families together and just talk about, what a transformation that we've been through. Because this is just, besides Christmas, is the only time where we've really shut down the whole world, and just we're all going through the same thing. And I think that's just something that has been a phenomenon for a lot of people during this time, because we haven't really experienced anything like this, where the whole world has been shut down based on this, catastrophic event. So the best thing we can do for that age is to reassure them and let them know and explain to them, that there are some changes that we're going to be going through. And the reality is, for a lot of young children that are in JK and SK, they're wearing masks and they're spending the time learning how to maintain proper hygiene. And for some parents, that's all they can do, is just teach their children how to be safe and maintain themselves. And hopefully through that safety, they feel more cohesive and they feel more together. Now, the older youth, they have access to information. So they're making some decisions that might be contrary to the decisions that their parents are making. And that has caused a little bit of tension in the home. Children at the age of 12, they do have the right to make decisions for themselves. So we try our best, and I encourage parents to include their children in the decision making. Yes, there are a lot of responsibilities that parents do have in terms of the welfare of their children. But when it comes to this specific thing, children are making some decisions for themselves, which may be different than their parents. Because if a parent has a medical condition and they're not able to fulfill their requirements medically, their child might have to do that for that circumstance. So it's about giving them the information that they need so that they can make an educated decision, and also validating their experiences as being real. Because what I'm hearing from lots of young people is their social life has been impacted by this. And if you were having some difficulties managing your friendships and social relationships in school, because it is difficult at that age, that was the first thing that they noticed, was that they didn't have that social support or that social network that you would get through play, organized sports, just being in that group of like-minded people. And that was really hard for young people to just sit with their thoughts. So a lot of my time was just trying to unpack with them, what are those feelings that you're experiencing? What are those concerns that have you worried right now? And yes, if you don't have that social outlet, who is in your life that we can reach out to, or you can reach out to, that can support you in this time of need? So that's what we were basically working on, is developing a safety plan of who you can reach out to and who you can connect with if you're experiencing some of those social losses, or if you are so used to doing a certain routine on the weekend where you would see your family or see your grandparents. What could you do in place of that if you couldn't physically go out? So we were looking at other mediums of communication and looking at other ways that we could support one another. And I was just encouraging parents and families and just people that are in relationships just to have some regular meetings so that they can just connect with each other and just really talk about their feelings and clear that space so that they can just be and just live in that vulnerability and just to really work through their emotions, because we were just going through that turmoil. So it was just an up and down type of thing that people really needed to ground themselves and just find that support that they needed.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely fantastic. And I think there's one thing that you said that's what I find quite relevant is that safety plan. Now we have a safety plan for, or if there's an earthquake, you go under the table. If there's a fire, you find your exit, you go low to the ground, you make your way. And as well, Nelson, I'm sure being in the military and in that kind of, very rigid, very regimented mentality, you have a safety plan for everything. But do we have a safety plan for a traumatic event that's happened to us? Do we have a safety plan for someone who is suffering from mental health or, disabilities, or, coming to a new country that's feeling overwhelmed? Like, do we have a safety plan for this? And I think that's something that we should all have, but also present to the people in our houses. What happens if this happens again? What is our safety plan? What is our go-to plan? Okay, so this happens again, we're locked in for a month. What can we do? Well, we can read more. We can do this, we can do that. So having that safety plan, I think, is absolutely fantastic. And like Nelson, what would you say, being kind of like in the military background, what would be a safety plan in your mind for someone going through a traumatic event, whether it was the pandemic or an incident like yourself, or just struggling mentally? What would you say is a great safety plan for someone suffering from trauma?
So let me start with one story that I had opportunity to live with a group of adolescents, as Alicia mentioned it. So I was invited to talk to a group of adolescents who suffer sexual violence from their parents. So when I was invited, so was a group, like a mixed group, boys and girls. And I asked, hey, why me? Why do how can I approach them? So, and they were destroyed, feeling like almost dead because something tragic happened to them with their parents. So, and my father, he told me that, hey, you have one entry point, show them that you die as well. So, and I brought one photo from my incident and when I was almost died. And I showed them and I started, hey, I know how is this kind of feeling that you are dying. I know when you don't have any kind of hope. And sometimes you need to believe that you have this capacity and you have the support that maybe cannot be your family, but you can have a group of friends, you can have an uncle, you can have someone that can be your safety plan. You can be your help. And we started to discuss things, and then they when I enter in the room, they were looking at the floor and not look at me. And then they become open their eyes and we discuss. And after 2.5 hours, we hug each other and cry a lot. But talking about it, and I realized that time that, so we don't know what kind of problem or difficulties we can overcome. So we can we can try to understand our previous experience and share this. So since that time, since my incident, I think that having a safety plan is understand that it can happen again, understand that you have the opportunity to be prepared before it happens. So I am trying to do, for example, I started a conversation with my wife, hey, what do you do? What are you gonna do if I die? Now, I am the guy who managed the finance of the house. I know the banking account, I know everything. And so I am creating here a spreadsheet with everything that we should do if one or another can die. Oh, I cannot talk about this. This is ridiculous. No, it's not ridiculous, because we should discuss this. We should have a plan. So we should understand before it happens that some kind of things can happen. And I am in a comfort zone now, and I can understand much better than that moment what I should do. So having a safety plan is be prepared for the difficult, but when you have much more time and the opportunity to calm down and realize and think about all the ways, path, opportunity, support that you can have, because when that thing happens, you will be much more prepared. So this is the way that I think what is a safety plan. So safety plan is try to understand things that can happen before it happens, but when you have that time to understand the situation.
And I mean, absolutely. I mean, the one thing that, I would add to that too, as well, is, working with a lot of people as a hospice chaplain, you're interacting with individuals that are about to take the next journey, that end of life care. And I know a lot of them, when we speak about the process of everything, I would always kind of discuss with them openly was, did you have a plan? What was the plan that was set prior to this? And a lot of them, I would say 90% of them would say, well, I wasn't expecting this, so I don't have a plan. And what you were saying, Nelson, is like, when you talk to someone about this, you say, hey, let's make a plan just in case something happens. We're always so much a bad luck society where if we talk about trauma, we talk about negative things or end of life or death or things like that, it's a taboo, we don't talk about it. But when it comes to mental health and cognitive health and with traumatic events and things like this, we should have a plan. And the one thing that I had is I always have these weird analogies because that's just who I am. I'm a nerd. I had something called a psychological first aid toolkit. And when I was younger, we always had these first aid kits, bandages, gauze, scissors, all these things like that for if someone cut themselves. And then you'd have safety kits at school for an earthquake or disaster and things like that. But then I thought to myself, through the process of learning about psychology, psychosomatics, psychotherapy, do we have a toolkit for mental trauma? Do we have a psychological first aid toolkit for individuals that are suffering at this present moment? So if we're going through a traumatic event at the moment, do I have the tools to get me through this? And I think the hardest thing for a lot of the individuals and people that I talk to is the biggest problem that they're having is not what they're putting in the toolkit. Like, what makes you happy? Well, going for a walk, playing video games, reading a book, talking to friends. Okay, that's great. But what are you struggling with the most? And most of them will say, well, I'm in a new country and my family's not here. And I think that's probably the biggest struggle, is when you're in a traumatic event or like a pandemic, which it is in a way a traumatic disaster that we're going through. What would you recommend, or what would you suggest, Alethea, I'll throw this to you. What would you suggest to someone who is new, like yourself, being in a new country? What would you suggest to them? How would they kind of build a safety plan if their family's not here and they're alone or just in a small group? What would you suggest is the best way to build that safety plan?
Yeah, I definitely like what Nelson was talking about in terms of a crisis. And sometimes when you're in a crisis, there can be opportunities. And that's based on, going through the adversity and the challenge and then having an outcome. And the outcome, whether it's, good or bad, is the lesson that you learned once you went through it. And that is the opportunity to really look back and put in some safeguards, right? that kind of protect you and your emotional health and your emotion and your mental wellness. And an example of that would be if you're a newcomer, and depending on how you arrive too, because sometimes when we come from another country, there could be some conditions that we could have probably endured that may not want us to have much connections to our hometown based on how, you know, we left. And I always preface that because usually the first thing we do is connect ourselves to people that we might have been familiar with from our hometown. And maybe due to some trauma, we're not able to do that. So then what would be the next thing? Like, what are those activities and interests that you could have been connected to that I could offer here that is similar, that you can connect with? Because when I say community to people, they might just think it's your immediate family, but community is a gathering of like-minded people that are open to sharing the same fellowship or the same activities or the same like-mindedness as you. So what I do is, and what I suggest to people that are new is, how can I help you connect to those activities that you might have done back home? We can definitely find that here. It might be a different name, but let's see if we can find that. So I try to, you know, just try to find things that are similar and that they can feel a sense of connection with, if they're not able to connect to, you know, family. Then the second thing is your spirituality. If you feel connected in that way and you'd like to, you know, do something based on your faith, then I would offer to help search and find those resources for them so that they can feel comfortable connecting in that way. And for most of us that are in the business of serving others, then we would connect with community agencies and partners that we could have familiarized ourselves with, that we can also connect people to, where they can get that additional support that they need. So it's just really looking at where they're at and looking at that, well, I call it a wellness plan or a safety plan of just looking at those specific key areas like your physical wellness, your emotional wellness, your spiritual wellness, and also plugging in those activities that you would do that just keeps you more alive and hopeful. And for people that, you know, just tell me that, hey, right now I'm a social introvert, sorry, I'm not comfortable socializing because of those restrictions and protocols, then we try to look for some similar activities online that they can connect with that also gives them that group experience, that ability to participate, to share, and just to be heard. Because I think, you know, in the fact that we've gotten so insular because of these restrictions, you know, that's just making people think that, you know, maybe staying on my own is more safer. But I encourage people to reach out and find community and find people that can support you in helping you find your community.
I mean, absolutely well said. And Nelson, I'll pass that to you as well, and your thoughts on that too, because, you know, again, you've traveled the world so much and you've had, you know, an incident that was not where your home was, and you had a traumatic event that happened outside of your community, outside of your loved ones. That must have been so difficult, knowing that you're not with your family during a really crucial part, a scary, you know, end of life situation. It must have been very difficult not having that kind of group and community around you.
It was, yeah, for sure. And so when I woke up and realized that I was literally alone, far away from my family members, from my wife, and sorry, and but so during this situation, you need to be open, you know. So one thing that Alicia was saying is that you should be open. So people are facing probably the same kind of thing. If you don't open your door, people cannot enter, people cannot talk to you. And if you are feeling sick, if you are feeling sad, if you are feeling not bad, it's okay, because people, maybe they are not feeling well as well. And I realized that we can receive support even from someone that you know as an unknown people. So if you are open, and this is the way that I try to resist until my wife arrived, and she lost her thing. So basically she was supposed to arrive at 3 days, and she arrived like 5 days later, but she arrived. But during that time, I create my gang, you know, the nurse, the doctors, the person who brought my, like, the food. So I realized that, hey, I don't have family here. I don't have friends here, but I have, yes, the opportunity to make that. So, and I was open, to at least talk to them. And by the way, I was in a Spanish country, because it was the incident to happen in Haiti, but I was transferred to Dominican Republic, and I was at that time not like a proficient in Spanish. So the challenge of the language was another kind of thing. But I am Brazilian in this case, so I can talk. We call Portugal, so a kind of mix. They could understand a little bit, but the most important was my action, you know. So I demonstrate to them that, hey, I am open, I need your help, and probably I can help you as well. And we can discuss not about my feelings or discuss about my incident, but we can discuss about things that I like as a Alicia Nation. So we can try to find a common thing that can be the starting point, that you can start in this new relationship. So this is the way that I create my community in the hospital. And I stayed 30 days in that hospital. And in Brazil, when I came back, I stayed 6 months in another hospital. And so I only came back to my house like 7 months later. So I had to create another community in that hospital as well. And one thing that I can guarantee to you guys, when you are open, when you have this action, you, for sure, people will have in you, people will be open as well. So, and you can start your community. So I lived later, like until last May, I was living in New York, and I arrived without any friends again. So any other people. So every single moment that you move, you've been transferred or you are isolated, if you don't open your mind, or be open to others, you cannot have in them. So this is the way that you can, even if you are not like if you are an insular person, introspective person that you don't like, so you can find someone who is look like you and discuss about different kind of thing. A nerd, like a scientist or a chess player, doesn't matter. You can for sure find some kind of thing that will be common between you and the guy.
And that's
and
so
the
true.
last thing, just to complement one thing, sorry. And don't forget that we have the technology. We have the online part. If you are isolated, we have here. So I am in Brazil. So you are in Toronto. You have people in different parts of the world, and we are here discussing resilience. So be open. Doesn't matter if you are not like face to face. You can be open here. You can participate in different forums, watch a webinar, things like that. So the technology is here also to support us. That's it.
Well, I was just going to say that it absolutely clearly is perfect, because I think we are feeling so isolated right now. We feel so alone, but yet we neglect the blessings of technology. And I know there's some people, I'm not a fan of social media, I'm not too familiar with it, but I think a lot of people forget that, you know, okay, you can't see your loved ones right now, but do they have an iPhone? Do they have a smartphone? Do they have a smart device? Yes, they do. Well, FaceTime, Zoom, Google Meets, you know, Team Meets on Microsoft. The list is endless of opportunities to visit people virtually. And I think we're finding, you know, more now than ever that support is needed virtually. You you know, that face-to-face, as we were all talking, people are a little bit maybe hesitant to get that support face-to-face because we don't know what's going on and the restrictions and guidelines. And, you know, we're so in our own kind of world that we forget that there is that human contact that we had not that long ago. You know, a couple of years ago, it seemed that we're having a cup of coffee and we were hugging people and shaking hands. And so I think a lot of people are going to take a lot of time to gain that courage to go back out and say, I can do this. I'm okay. I can get the support. I can see my friends. But I want to ask both of you, what do you think now more than ever, or even in your own situations personally, what prevents people from opening up and talking about the trauma that they're going through, the trauma from a disability that happened to them or an incident? What would you say to everybody that's listening now and will continue to listen? What can we do to remove the fear of addressing what we're feeling inside? What would you say is like kind of steps to take to do that? Alethea, after you, please.
Oh, okay, great. Well, I was just thinking about it, Ross, and you were talking about, you know, what is it about that fear that, you know, holds people back? And when I look at the word fear, you know, it's false evidence appearing real. And, you know, sometimes because of the journey that we have taken to get to a safe place, there's some trauma along the way. And, you know, just having a lot of experience working with people that have faced a lot of trauma and concerns, you know, it's just that fight, flight, freeze response that they just constantly are stuck in. And when you're in that response, things come really short and quick. And it's really hard to process a lot of that information and a lot of the stressors that you could be facing. So, what I say to people is, you know what? This is a good time to just really step back and just take some time to really break down what is behind that fear. And when I look at that word of something not appearing real, that's based on our perception of what we think is happening. So if we're still in a trauma, fight, flight, freeze response, then we're just blocking, you know, those thoughts. I mean, it goes right into your sympathetic nervous system. So you're trying your best to just maintain some calmness there. And usually what happens is when you're able to just really step back, take a pause, and really get to the root of what is causing you to have that apprehension. Is it because when you were in your past country, you know, it was very clear on who you can socialize and associate with. And now you're coming to a larger city where there's no boundaries where that's concerned. You might be experiencing, you know, just that apprehension. I mean, remember, we were closed off for almost a year and a half, and now we're expected to gradually return to something that they call normalcy. And then we're all asking, well, what is that? And when you're coming from such a closed space, and then you're going back into the larger picture or larger environment, that's overwhelming for people. And then just think about it. You know, you were just slowly getting back into things, and now everything's open. And I'll just give you an example of that. I'm working with students, and they were isolated for almost 2 years, and now they're entering a first year of a brand new space. And they're like, oh my gosh, I don't know if I could walk into class like I used to. You know, was in a smaller school, and now I'm in a larger school of 100 people. And that globalization and those thoughts have really magnified for people, and they're really scared. And I understand that. And I said to them, you know, let's just take it one step at a time. And I think you said that, Ross, and also Leone. It's just about not making it so global and so overwhelming. It's just that one little step that you can take to start making that difference. So then that's what I do. I just walk it back for my clients and I say to them, okay, yes, we have a lot going on, but what's one small task that you can do today that can help make that inroad? Okay, well, yes, there was somebody in your class. They were sitting beside you. Is that one person that maybe you can just strike up a conversation with so that at least you have a familiarity the next time you return? And then they're like, hey, I could do that instead of going in and seeing all these people. So it's just about really changing that perspective and then starting small so that you can get that support. And then I say, come back to me and let me know how that works, right? Because it's that gradual exposure. And then people start building and increasing their time and spending more time out with other people. So yeah, I think Nelson said it. You got to have a plan and a strategy of how you're going to get right back into, you know, he said civilian life, but you know what I mean, like normal life, and just getting back into the swing of things. And luckily, he built his community along the way, and then he found that support until he had the people that matter to him arrive and just give him that support. So I do the same thing. And, you know, while people are waiting for their family members to arrive, then I say, connect with me. Let's give you that support that you need until your loved ones are a little bit near. So it's just about breaking through that fear and starting small and getting the support that you need so that you can challenge it and it won't be as overwhelming the next time.
Beautiful.
Alicia, and just complementing one thing. So talking to other people that have been facing or overcome different kind of difficulties and having this fear. So one thing I realized that sometimes you have fear, not necessarily about what you're gonna share, but the social judgment or thinking, oh, what they will think about this. And you try to enter in their mind, oh, they will think about this, but you are not that guy. You are not that person. You are not them. And sometimes what you're gonna share will be very important, not for everybody, but for one person, just one person. And you can break through this part and starting a conversation with them. So one thing that I normally share and comment to my colleagues that they have this kind of fear is don't try to think about what they will think about what you're gonna say. Just understand that if you understand that that thing is important or you wanna share this, give them the opportunity to answer, not imagine their answer before they say. So, and you can, yes, baby steps as well. So we like one thing, two things, you don't need to share everything. And the way that I work with and I overcome with all my challenges was telling my story. And I realized that the first time was, oh, people, they don't want to listen to me. So it doesn't make sense. Why I'm talking about this? I am a guy with disabilities and things like that. So why? Then I realized that, oh, when I share this experience, people, whoa, pay attention because this guy is this. And same thing that happened. So I figured out basically one or two open sentence that I have in order to break the conversation. So, hey, so, and you can try to understand, okay, how can I like unlock this freeze moment? Okay, try to understand what kind of topic, what kind of moment you can bring that will be like smoothly in the conversation, and then you can be more open. So you don't need to say everything, but try to understand tiny things that will be easily to say, that you don't need to be like having fear about that part, and you can share this information. So you can imagine this, and this open sentence can maybe unlock all your feelings, and you can try to, and you can be more like deaf in this part.
And I think it's absolutely fantastic. And it's funny how, you know, throughout all we're talking about right now, the one thing that we keep bringing up is that unification of working together, because it sounds silly, but sometimes in some cases, trauma, like a pandemic that we're going through, which we can say that most people are relatable about, that we're very relatable to it. we are so relatable to it that we understand it so well that we actually can bring ourselves together, starting a community, growing a community, building unification. Because years from now, we're going to say to each other, like, remember the pandemic, remember when we were locked in, remember all these things like that. And you're like, yes, I actually remember that. I actually felt that. I actually find that relatable. And in some cases, we have the ability with technology, but also the simple thing of just on the phone or writing a message or a letter. This is very relatable right now. We are going through an adventure. We are going through a new journey that this is something that in our generation, in a lot of generations, haven't experienced before. So we will build a unified understanding of what trauma, having the disabilities, having, mental health issues and struggles during this time. We can all come out of this at the end going like, yes, we are connected because we can relate with this. We all went through the same process. We are all building communities together that are very relatable. And I think that's the key is right now is when we're talking about this, simply just the three of us speaking about our own struggles, about what we deal with, about how we help support individuals going through traumatic events and situations like ours. Just the three of us right now have already built a very strong bond in regards to understanding trauma, how we went through it, how we are dealing with it. And I think that's the most amazing thing is that we have the ability to build a community around these sort of things. And at the very beginning of this talk, we asked people to do a poll. So both of you know, we asked sort of like a yes or no poll about questions, top 10 questions about, struggles and things like that. And the results are quite interesting. And I want to go through them before we get to the Q&A and seeing what your thoughts are. So one of the questions was, has being far away from your native country caused you distress? Now, 61% said yes, and 39% said no. So do you, both of you, really think that, being away from the country of your origin, around, birth country, around from your family, do you think that that hinders, success on, dealing with these situations? Or do you think it doesn't really make a difference? Or do you think this is a pretty big deal when it comes to healing in that kind of realm?
Well, I mean, I think I had mentioned that earlier that, sometimes we're coming from traumatic situations. And that could be the reason why we needed to leave in the first place, was because of that trauma that wasn't resolved, or it could have been inflicted on us because of our gender, our sexuality, racialized trauma, like social hierarchy, because we are living in countries where there may be social class issues. And you're not able to move up. So leaving that behind and coming to hopefully a new country that doesn't have those issues. But we all know that those things, they creep up from day to day. But I just think that, now that we're moving in a space where you'll have people that have had those lived experiences and can help you walk through those things, that I find that it's getting a little bit more easier in terms of alleviating that. But yeah, I mean, we're so used to those comforts of home. And then coming to a new place, you just want to duplicate those comforts. So it's just about finding your space and just owning that. The other concern about people, having to leave their home, you're right, those family ties and those strong bonds are, culturally relevant for people. And coming to a new place where you may not have that, yes, it's going to cause you some distress. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and complementing this part, so the good at the same time, the bad thing when you live abroad, when you live in a different country, that in your country, you are someone that people know you, you have your name, you have your story, And the bad thing when you start you're living in a different country, that you need to start from the zero. You don't know nobody. Nobody know about your professional skills. Nobody know about who you are, who your family is. So you need to rebuild it. Depends on where you came from. You want to abandon that part. In my case, I decided to move to New York, and was tough in the beginning. Not only for me, but the problem that I caused to my children. For example, they they had to adapt again in school. When we arrived, they even speak English, so they had to start to understand and learn English. So they face a lot of difficulty, and I was suffering because they were suffering, and I am the guy who calls this suffering part. And we discuss each other as our community, our close family. Hey, we can overcome it together. We decided together come here, and we have our capacity to create our story here. And 3 months later, they start to understand English, and we start to adapt our lives. So when you realize that you abandon not only your country, but your name, your professional skills, your almost history, it's tough, but at the same time, it's an opportunity because you can create a new one. So I am the guy who always will try to see the positive part of this opportunity, So because we have a lot of difficulties, we have a lot of problems. So if you only pay attention to this kind of thing, we cannot be happy. And so I have a quote for one singer called Nightbird that she's sang like in American Got Talent, something like that this year, and she had cancer, and she said that you can't wait until life isn't hard anymore before you decide to be happy. So it doesn't matter where you are, doesn't matter what you're suffering, you have the chance, you have the opportunity. So living abroad is tough sometimes, but you can change it. The beginning will be the hard part, and feeling isolated, you have the online part. So during the pandemic, being like a Brazilian in New York, cannot leave my house. I was Zoom addicted, but not for meetings, but to talk to my parents, to uncles that I never talked before, even in Brazil. So I start to schedule a lot of meetings with colleagues, different guys, in order to be close with something or someone that I can discuss about anything.
Well, I think that's something that we talked about during this this webinar was being prepared, having that psychological first aid toolkit, having that readiness package, having that safety protocol. That quote that you did, Nelson, was very powerful, because we are not prepared until it is the dire end, or it is the moment of oh wow, reality check, I wasn't prepared for this. If I was prepared for this, I probably would have a better game plan, a better safety net, a better toolkit. So I think that's one thing to get out of this webinar is, we are all understanding the different sides of trauma, of disabilities, of struggles and mental health struggles that we're dealing with. And once this is over, once, using the pandemic as an example, if we remember, when this disappears, we will still have to come up with tools to go through other events, because, unfortunately, there is other events that will happen in our lives, nature or, whatever that might be, that we will have to have that readiness. We will have to have that kit ready. So the one thing I would say out of this webinar is to people that are listening and continue to listen is, having that game plan when it comes to your safety of your house and your loved ones is great, but also have a game plan, structured game plan for your mental health and mental well-being, because I think that's really more important, because at the end of the day, when a house falls down, we are still here presently in our bodies. We are still permanently here. So we have to be prepared for that. One of the poll questions was, which this one was really powerful, is, have you or someone you know ever been through a traumatic experience or extremely challenging situation? 91% said yes, 9% said no. And in some cases, I think that when someone says no, maybe we don't know because we don't talk about it openly. Maybe we don't know that there's someone in our lives or in our community circle that is going through a traumatic event. So that's potentially when someone would say, well, I don't know. And I think that's one thing that we talked about, is that fear of addressing it, is, feeling comfortable enough to ask for help. So I think it's a big key. And Alicia, you said wonderful things about removing that fear, removing that ability to say, let's just keep going and just, we can do this because we are unified in a community. We have the opportunities to talk to people. It's amazing. So I think this is absolutely amazing. And I would like to get to the questions because we have quite a few. If both of you are ready for some in-depth questions. Yeah, okay, perfect. So this is a great question. We kind of touched a little bit about it in our talk. Have you experienced PTSD and what sort of tools helped? So both of us, or all three of us, have we each of us suffered? So for me personally, I would say the most PTSD that I kind of can think of at the top of my head was the loss of my mother to cancer a few years ago. And that question that I had to myself of like, why? And what was the reason behind it? And why couldn't I stop it? Why couldn't I do these things? I'm a spiritual individual. Why couldn't I get that help that was needed? And what I found that was helpful for that situation was I knew through the journey with her and her cancer diagnosis and all throughout my life as a child, we had the best time humanly possible. We did amazing things and we knew that every moment of every day was precious and we always shared our love for each other every minute of every day. That helped me get through it. But I would say, post-traumatic stress disorder can come from a wide variety of events. It's, whatever the situation is. So Alethea, have you suffered from PTSD? What would you say is your toolkit or your game plan? How did you, not resolve it per se, but kind of help it remove it from yourself?
Oh my gosh, it's just an amazing question. Just going through racialized trauma, being a Black woman and trying to navigate the spaces that were definitely not designed for me to walk through. And just having that challenge of being accepted for who you are with your intelligence and your knowledge. And, just having some people really be surprised at the fact that I'm there in that space and, having to experience those microaggressions. And for me, the PTSD is just, having the trauma of going through an event and the remnants of that emotional and psychological thoughts, like, and just having the remnants of what it felt like to go through that situation. And just causing that stress for me was really difficult. But then that's when I just needed to take a step back and just really look at my circle group and my friend group and get my validation and affirmation through people. And then, with the murder of George Floyd, which I'm sure a lot of people had really taken a step back and just really started to think like, wow, all those things that the Black and African community were telling us about police brutality. We were always thinking like, what the heck were you guys up to that the police keep on doing these things? And then when they saw for themselves that sometimes it could be just standing there, buying cigarettes, standing at the corner, walking down the street, there's some real tension there. And people were able to see it for the first time. And then people started validating and expressing their experiences. And I think out of that experience for me, made me realize that I had so much knowledge and talent that I was squandering being in a space that didn't celebrate me and my accomplishments. And that's why I decided that it was time for me to take my knowledge and my skills and my support and open up my own private practice. And then I ended up having so many other opportunities and connecting with other people on PsyMood and all these things that I'm doing here for PsyMood. So I just thought that what if I never decided to, take that challenge and, out of my racialized microaggressions, there was some triumph out of that. And being able to really make the decision of putting those boundaries up and saying that I deserve more, that I was able to get more for myself. So for me, the best thing that I could do was to reach out to my support networks that affirmed me and validated me and said, you are worth it. You are worthy. You are so valuable for your knowledge and your expertise. And as soon as I started manifesting my greatness, doors opened up for me. I decided that I could no longer go with the same type of mentality of why me? And I decided, why not me? And this was the time when I said, okay, well, let's take those adversarial things and make it something that was triumph for me. So I decided that why am I focusing on all the things that weren't going well? Why not focus on the things that are going right? And then when I started aligning myself with people that had the same type of experience as me, they were able to connect me to other people that connected me to other things. And then I was able to leave those thoughts behind. And it wasn't because of what I was thinking about myself. It was just a perception of what greatness looked like for other people. And I decided that I no longer wanted to be in that image of what other people thought of me, that I was going to go with my talents, my abilities, and do something new. So it's just about really, taking a negative experience and correcting it into something that was positive and showed me some positivity in the end. So I just really corrected that emotional experience for myself.
Wow. Wow. Unbelievable. Nelson, please. I'm lost for words. Yeah, absolutely. Nelson, please.
Congrats, by the way.
Yeah, unbelievable.
So I hadn't, but my family had, when after all those difficult part that we live. So basically, my karma is health. So basically all my challenges that I have been thinking on myself and my family is about health. And one thing that happened, was like a big challenge for us when my little child had a brain tumor. And when we were living like an amazing moment in our life, we figured out that brain tumor. And my wife started to ask me, why her? Why our little princess? Why not me? Why not you? Because we have the strength, we have the capacity, but why she? And it was very difficult, but the solution was the same. So I started to realize that at least we figure out that part before being like very seriously. So yes, they had to open her brain. Yes, they had to extract the tumor, but during this just before the surgery, so just one parent could go with her, and my wife went with her, and she said to my wife, hey, why you are crying? Because I will go inside the door, just remove this tiny ball and come back. It's okay. So I am happy. And she was right. So we had the opportunity. So I cannot keep asking why. So I can at least try to look the other side. So yes, I have another problem. Yes, another health problem, another health problem with my child. But yes, at least I have the capacity to solve it, to remove the problem and move forward. And it was true. 3 days later, she was at home with like a big scare. But yes, this is part of her story. She's a resilient person as well. So, and we face it. So one thing that Alicia mentioned by the end of her ideas was about positiveness. So about being positive. So understanding that your problem, your suffering part, always having two sides, and you have the opportunity to try to select the positive side of all this kind of thing.
Wow. Well, first of all, I'm very happy to hear that she's doing well and that it
Yes,
went
she is.
successful. And what a powerful little warrior she is to go through that at a very young age. But I'm very happy and sending prayers that she's doing well. So that's wonderful. And I mean, speechless for both of you to share those stories, a very fragile stories, a very kind of delicate stories, is very important, because I think it's important for all of us to understand that it's okay. It's okay speaking. It's okay to talk about how feeling of discriminations, your situation, being a soldier, feeling vulnerable, feeling fragile. It's okay to do that. And I think the one thing that we need to really share on this social media platform or this virtual world is, no matter who you are, where you're from, what you look like, or how many muscles you may have, it's okay to talk openly, to address the feelings that you're having, to address that you're fearful of what is coming up next. And I think those two stories that you just shared with us are so powerful, not only about the situation that occurred, but how you resolved it and moved forward. That's the key out of all of this, I think, is the story is powerful, but how you are, who you are today, and how you got here, that's really the true story of it. Because I think the one thing that we need to, really highlight is not the why, but what. What will I do now? What will I do with this? And, working with individuals that are end of life, it's not why did this happen to me, is what am I going to do now when I have the time? What is the next step? What am I going to tell my loved ones? What am I going to tell my partner? What am I going to do with the time that we have? And the one thing I always say to people is, we're so focused on the minutes and the hours of a big grandfather clock, but we neglect the seconds, the little individual seconds that create the minutes and create the hours. So it's not the why, but it's the what. And you two just shared that absolutely perfectly. It's not the why, but the what did I do with that? And I think that's amazing. I think that's a whole nother webinar in itself. The other question I wanted to kind of throw out to you as well is, have you experienced, both of you, social discrimination or exclusion during the pandemic? Have you found that discrimination and exclusion has kind of been heightened during the pandemic, or do you find it still the same? What would you say, Alicia, in regards to that question?
Well, I see it as a twofold thing, because I was a busy person before COVID, and the fact that I made some choices to pivot during that time. Actually, staying home was a good thing for me. It was a good thing for me, because I just really needed to remove myself from that busyness of always being on the go and, creating opportunities, and just really taking a pause. It really just started to make me think about, some of the things that I was doing, and if I really needed to do them anymore, and how I could streamline my life to make things a little bit more minimalist for me, and because I was that person that was always busy. And then I noticed that when I really took a break, that's when I was able to really, sit with myself and my thoughts, and just, come up with a different direction, because I needed to pivot at the time. So for me, just having that social exclusion for a bit just helped me sit with my thoughts and just make some different decisions, and just really review my goals and where I wanted to go moving forward. And just coming and connecting with people that were going through similar struggles. I think for them it was just, like you said, not feeling like they were all alone. The social exclusion really helped them start to really pay attention to some of those things that they were neglecting because of that busyness, or not having that time because they were going to work, or they couldn't go to their child's parent teacher night because that just happened to be on their evening shift. And those things were changed, and people started tapping into what was important to them and what really mattered. And I think that's what caused a lot of the concern, because they were removed from things, but then it gave them the time to really think about what was important, what really mattered. So, I mean, just to answer that, yes, in one way it was seen as a really bad thing, but then I think people also seen it as an opportunity to really assess what they were doing in their life, and really to start cutting down, or really taking an assessment of what was really important at that time. I hope that makes sense,
And
because, you know, I'm just
Yeah,
thinking about some
well,
of the young,
absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah.
especially around some of the young people that I work with that said, you know, my friends were removed from me, but then I just started thinking about their friends, like, are these the right friends that they really needed? Because, you know, at times of need, should people be moving away, or does that bring people a little bit closer? And I think that
Right.
was just a lot of the assessments that people had to do within themselves and also about their circle.
yeah, to
Fantastic.
me it was similar in one way, that I was lucky because I had my family, like my wife and my kids. And to me, being isolated, like, uh, uh, and or I felt the exclusion, but in the same way, I had the opportunity to recreate or strengthen the bond with my kids. So the father was there all the time, every single day, 24 hours per day. So I was there. So to me was an amazing opportunity to like being with them all the time. So and even for my marriage part, because my wife, he has never had me like all the time at home, and we realized that okay, we can live again, we can definitely we live and we love each other, because being the same place all the time, if you don't like each other, will be incredible, terrible part. So to us was like I think that was uh, a scientific experience living with them and recreate this bond and understanding our problems and try to solve the problems together. And but at the same time having our own time. So we try to isolate sometimes each other from us, because we cannot live together all the time. So I will isolate in one part of the house. So okay, today I need to be alone, and then recreate the group like but we define some moments that we all be together. So was uh tough, but at the same time good moment with my family.
Yeah, and I think you said it. Both of you said it so well. Is that isolation? How can we utilize it? And again, it's not the why, but the what. And the one
Yeah,
thing that I learned so well is because I am a spiritual individual. I pray a lot. I do meditations. I learned a lot about myself when you have nothing but time, nothing about this moments yourself, and you have that ability when you wake up going, it's just me again, and what are we going to do today? So I always say to people, if we come out of this pandemic worse off than we did going in, then we didn't utilize this time wisely enough. But if you're coming out of this pandemic better than you when you went in, then we did the right thing. And what I mean by that is we have the technology to go online, do courses. We can watch webinars. We can read books. We can follow individuals like you guys and learn from your techniques and grow. We have the social media platform where we can come out of this pandemic stronger than we went in. But I think what will happen and what will hinder this is people will be going, why, and not like, what will I do? What's next? What shall I do differently today? And I think that's a big thing is we both, all of us talked about is not the why, but the what. Another question that just came up was, and this might be a tough one to answer, but it is a great question, is how long does it take to overcome trauma? Now, it's difficult to say in my my profession, and my thoughts is there's not really a timeline, because realistically it could take a lifetime to truly understand and comprehend what trauma is for you personally. It took me most of my life to understand that, yeah, I have some things that I need to deal with, but it took a lot of time. So Alethea, what would you say is not necessarily a timeline, but what do you think is the great answer to that question? That's that huge question of how do you, like, how long will it take to overcome trauma?
Well, I mean, I have to just let people know that it's nothing that has really a time stamp on it that says by this date you're going to be free and clear of all of your thoughts and your hurts. What I'd say to people is that you'll be able to manage your emotions a little bit better, and the impact won't be as difficult to overcome like it did from the beginning. So, in time, you'll be able to manage it a little bit better, but you don't forget it. I still have my, memories of things that have impacted me, but I just realized that they were memories, because that was at a time and a place where I could have been a different person. And you know what? Things happen. And I think Nelson made it clear, that's just part of life. We have those ups and downs. It's just how quickly do you bounce back and, overcome these situations. Yeah, life could be really messy sometimes for some of us. But my thing is, it's just like, what are those tools that you're using to just help clean up a little bit, and just make that space a little bit more livable for you and other people. So yeah, it takes some time, and maybe in 3 months will it have that much of an impact on you? It might not. But that's the only way that we can really measure it, is just by the intensity of the emotion and how it affected you. And now that you have gone through that major situation, how are you managing your emotions and those remnants of those feelings that you've had? That takes time. I can't really measure it, but I think it's just for that person and that family to know when they're feeling more stable, when they're feeling more whole again, when they're feeling a sense of belonging, when they're feeling safe to express themselves and not feel as vulnerable. I mean, that takes time.
Yeah.
Yeah. And to me, I totally agree with you. And I guess that two things. So first of all, doesn't matter how big or how terrible is the trauma, don't think about the whole trauma. Think about the quick steps or the baby steps that you can overcome. So sometimes you have a big challenge, but you can having like a baby step. Then the second part is, I am very proud about my scars, not the scars that I have in my skin, but the scars that I have in my body, in my mind. So, and these scars have been make me better because I have learned a lot. And thanks to that, I have more capacity to overcome the next one, because I will have new one. I have no doubt about that. But having and understanding that I had the opportunity to overcome all those scars, the next one, I have no doubt that I'm gonna face. I don't know how, but what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna do. So the scars you don't have option. You're gonna carry all these scars with you forever. So the way that you look at the scars, maybe you're gonna feel better or not. So be proud of your story. Be proud of your history.
And so well said, because I was, it's something that I utilize when I speak to people, and even to myself, that when you go into a museum and you see all these medieval shields, you see a lot of scars, and it's a sign of pride. It's like, those are battles that I survived. Those are battles that we won, and those are battles that we lost, but we survived. But we didn't throw the shield away. We kept it. Look how many scars we have. That is a sign of stories, pride, distinguishing marks, wins and losses. So mentally, physically, and emotionally, we are a giant shield, and every scar that we have is a badge of honor in a way, because these are the things that we did. Why did it happen? It doesn't matter, but what do we do with it? That's the key. And the next question, the final question, is perfect for this, is what do you think about the traumas and mental scars that the teenagers will carry post-COVID? So we talked a lot about adults, but what do you think in the younger generation, the teenagers, the mental scars, the traumas that they're going to be carrying to themselves or throughout life after the pandemic or into school? What, Lethea, what would you say is, I don't want to say solution, but what would you say is the advice to teens that are going to come out of this post-COVID, this pandemic, potentially with markings on their shield, scars and battle scars from mental health? What would you say is sort of like a beacon of hope for them when they come out of this pandemic?
Yes, I mean, I just have to acknowledge them and just say, oh my gosh, I mean, you have the impact of looking at your parents, looking at your social world, and just realizing that the things that you once knew are changing. And I think for them, they're facing the same type of concerns, that uncertainty and not knowing what's going to be happening. But then just having those conversations and just being open, like Nelson was saying, and just being vulnerable and having that space to share, I find that they're feeling more comfortable. They are having a hard time, and I'm acknowledging that, and I'm validating their experiences that, yeah, we're having a tough time. But then again, it's still, again, about repivoting and really taking those small steps to say to yourself, okay, yes, things are happening, but what do I want from this? Like, what's my desired outcome? What is my intention so that I can move forward and be great?
Mhm.
And I think from what I'm hearing from young people, they're saying that this is their stepping stone too. This is
Yeah.
their opportunity to do some things a little bit different. Like when they weren't in that social group, they're finding their group. They weren't doing those activities because they were taken away, but now they're reframing it into, well, what can I do that I can serve others? So they're not really always looking at how it's affected them, but in turn, they're trying to find out how they can support others to help them go through this. So yeah, they're internalizing it a bit. And of course, they're facing their uncertainties, but they're realizing that, you know what? This is the time to make some really solid decisions about some things that I want to see moving forward in my life. And who are those people that can really help me move forward? And that's what we're looking at, which it goes right back to that psychological first aid and that safety plan. It's just, who are those supports in my life that I could reach out to, that are meaningful for me, that I could really support and rely on.
Amazing.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah, and Nelson, what would your thoughts be on that final question about, what would you say to those teenagers, or really anybody in general, coming out of this pandemic, coming out of COVID with some scars on their shields, some battle scars? What would you say as a motivation or inspiration to kind of say, like, we can do this?
Yeah, so I have a teenager at home. So, and one thing, I talked a lot with him in order to understand what's going on and how he is facing this. So, and I talked to his friends as well. So, and one thing to me is, again, both sides, the good side. So you have been facing a very difficult period of the life in the world, not only in your family, and you survived. You are here, so you are a strong guy. You proved to you and to us that you can do it. So, and probably you have different and new challenges in your future, but now you know that you can do it. So, and the most important part is you don't need to do it alone. We are here to support you, and you have your support community, your gang, your friends. So one thing, so having allies, having someone that you don't need to face it alone. So one thing that I mentioned to him is we moved from Brazil to New York, from New York to another country, and we are here now. And they abandoned, and he said, I will abandon my friends. So, abandon? You have the internet. You have now friends all over the world. So this is fantastic. So get this opportunity and live on. So, and he is connecting all the time with his friends from everywhere, and they are supporting through the game, through other things. So being open, again, the same thing that I mentioned before. So be open, create allies, and believe that you are much more stronger than you imagine, and you have all the tools that you need in order to overcome your challenges.
Well, I think that's absolutely amazing. And I think what a great way to segue to the end of this webinar is that motivational thoughts and those speaking. And, I think this is never going to be enough. There's plenty more webinars that we're going to do, and podcasts too as well, because we know PsyMood has their podcast series that you find on iTunes and Spotify. I think we need to do a podcast. I think we need to do podcasts, because this is a discussion that really doesn't end. This is just a small little part of this journey that we're going through, and discussions and openness and the feelings that we're having. I think this is a very small, and I think having these webinars will give people that opportunity to build a safety plan, to build their psychological toolkit. We're just one step forward to adding more tools to that tool and more strategy to their safety plan. So before we close up, I want to ask both of you where we can find you. Where is your platform? Where can we meet you? Where can we talk with you? And Leone, I also want to share where we can find your book. Where can people visit you and talk with you and learn about you? So Alethea, where can people find you? If they wanted to reach you on platforms or social media, where can we find you?
Well, they can connect with me right here on the PsyMood platform. Just search for my first and last name, and you can connect with me there. And I'm also on social media platforms if you want to connect with me. And I just want people to say that this is a great time to really check in with someone about your mental health and your mental wellness. I want you to know that you're worthy and you deserve to be here. And welcome. Let's settle in and get that support that you need. I'm here for you.
Amazing. That's fantastic. That's awesome. And then Nelson, where can we find you? Where can we openly talk with you? And where can we find this amazing book? I have already found it, so it's going to be added to my list of favorite books. Where can we find you and connect with you on social media platforms or Facebook? And where can we find your book?
So very easy. My handle is Nelson Leoni in all social media, so you can find me very easy. And please, I am a guy who loves to talk about all these kind of things, listen to people, and share my experience and listen to your experience. So glad to talk to you guys. So handle Nelson Leoni, and my book was released today in Amazon. So you can find in Canada, US, Europe, Japan, Australia, everywhere. So the link I think that we're gonna share. I hope that this book can help you to find your journey, to find your tools, and inspire you to overcome your challenges. As you can probably read through my story, that I had a tough story, but I am very proud of my story. And these scars that I have been bringing made me now. So, and I hope that this experience can impact you in order to inspire you. That's it. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
Well, I mean, first of all, not only am I hosting this, we've talked before and we've discussed openly about it, together, but it's an amazing opportunity for myself, because sometimes you need others to talk about their feelings and their process to reiterate that you're doing the right thing. And being inspired by both, looking up to both of you, I know that the thing that I'm on, helping people, and also myself and people around me, I'm doing the right thing, that I feel that acceptance. And, part of working with PsyMood as healthcare liaison lead, we would like to offer a thank you for everyone showing it. And we're also going to share with you guys two new special things that we're going to be having, QR codes. So get your phones ready, because we are going to be sharing a QR code for this opportunity here that you see on your screen. And then also for Nelson Leoni's book, there'll be a QR code that you can take a picture of, and then it would take you directly to his book, as you can see here. So with this here, get your phone out, scan the QR code for a free intake session with PsyMood. And then on the one on the right there, you can scan to order Nelson Leoni's book. So if you guys want to take the time to do that, in the meantime, as you're doing that, PsyMood will send you a thank you and offer you not only the scanned QR code, but also a promo code. So as a show of appreciation, PsyMood is offering you free 15-minute intake session with a specialist of your choice. And also, which is amazing, you get a 10% off the first 4 paid sessions with when you use the promo code PsyMood session 10% off. So you can see screen, there's no spaces, and it's 10% off. This is a great promo code. You can visit PsyMood at www.psymood.com, PSYMOOD.com, and you can find them on LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook using the handle MyPsyMood for those social media platforms. And again, guys, there is the screen. We'll show you the QR code one more time. People didn't get the Q code there. We want to make sure everyone gets that free intake session with PsyMood, but also to get Nelson Leoni's book. Already got it. So, but use this Q code. Yes.
And if you don't have, or later, if you need to remind the name of the book, this is the I don't know if you can see, let the blurred part, but the name is Leone, Life After Life. So
Life After Life, beautiful.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So I don't know if I can let me just share this part. So this is the cover. So Leone, Life After Life. You can find it very easily in Amazon. Thank you so much.
Well, excellent. Well, thank you. And to both of you, thank you so much. I appreciate you both greatly. Thank you for your time. Thank you for all of you that are viewing. Thank you for everyone that asked the questions and did the questions. This is just one of many webinars that we're going to be doing. And again, if you want to listen to our podcast, we did episode 1 not that long ago. It was aired this morning. It's PsyMood series on iTunes and Spotify. And I also want to, welcome both of you to do a podcast with me as well, because I think we have a lot more to talk about. I also want to let people know that this is probably one of many webinars that we're going to be doing together. But all of you, thank you so much for your time. I really do appreciate both of you for being here. And again, everyone for listening, thank you for sharing the evening with us and staying for the next webinar. And I wish you all a wonderful evening. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Nice meeting everybody. Have a good night.